All right, so you're diving into the world of D&D, right? Crafting your next high elf character. And you want their name to be legendary, but not in the typical, kind of way. You're aiming for unforgettable, for snorts of laughter around the table, names that are so ridiculously elven they transcend into pure comedy gold.
Yeah.
Well, today we're taking a deep dive into 100 hilarious high elf names that'll make your D&D party snort their mead. Get ready for some serious laughs.
What's fascinating about this article is that it doesn't just throw a bunch of funny names at you. It actually dissects the mechanics of humor, specifically how it works in the context of these often overly serious ancient beings.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We've got our source material. We're ready to inject some humor into our campaigns. But where do we even start? This isn't just about slapping a silly name on an otherwise serious character, is it?
Not at all. It's about understanding the why. Why is Glitterbeard the Beardless funny? It's the unexpected contrast. We expect high elves to be majestic, wise, maybe even a little intimidating.
Right. Practically made of moonlight and ancient wisdom.
Exactly. But Glitterbeard the Beardless.
Yeah.
Suddenly, we're imagining this dignified elf with a sparkly, non-existent beard and that clash of expectations. That's what tickles our funny bone.
So it's almost like we're playing a prank on our preconceived notions of what a high elf should be.
Precisely. And the article dives into some really clever ways to do just that. For example, it talks about using modern or mundane words in high elf names. Imagine a venerable elven warrior named Chuck.
Chuck. Okay, I could already see where this is going.
Right. The juxtaposition of the ordinary with the extraordinary is inherently funny. It's like picturing a Starbucks cup on the table next to Gandalf. It just doesn't fit, and that's where the humor lies.
It makes me think about a character concept I had once. A powerful elven sorceress named Debbie. Everyone underestimated her because of the name, but she was a force to be reckoned with.
That's brilliant. You've tapped into another layer the article explores, using the name as a source of irony, creating this unexpected contrast between the name and the character's true nature. Think about a timid, bookish elf named Brawlstorm. Just the name itself practically writes the character arc for you.
And speaking of writing character arcs, have you ever had a character name inspire an entire personality?
Yeah, it happens all the time. And this article emphasizes how a funny name can actually add depth and intrigue to your characters, both player characters and NPCs.
All right, so we've got these hilarious names. We're subverting expectations. But how do we actually use them effectively in our games? I mean, we don't want to turn the entire campaign into a stand-up routine, right?
Of course not. It's about finding a balance. The article talks about using these names strategically to enhance your story, not derail it.
So give us some examples. How could we use these ridiculous names to really make our campaigns sing?
Well, let's take that idea of the reluctant hero we touched on earlier. Imagine a character named Twig Biceps, constantly underestimated because of their seemingly weak name. How much more satisfying is it when Twig turns out to be a powerhouse, defying all expectations?
It's that element of surprise, right? The audience, or in this case, your fellow players, they think they've got this character figured out, but then bam, the name becomes this hilarious contradiction.
Exactly. And the article isn't just talking about PCs. Imagine a haughty high elf shopkeeper named, as we were saying earlier, Bowflexus Maximus. The name screams muscle-bound hero, but maybe he's actually terrified of a stiff breeze.
That's almost Shakespearean, the comedy of it all, these grand names clashing with reality. But the article also mentions puns and wordplay, which feels like a whole other level of funny.
Absolutely. And it makes sense. Puns play on our shared understanding of language, creating this instant connection between the name and the joke. Think about a high elf bard named Lembas Loafer. It's silly, it's memorable, and it tells us something about the character right away. They probably prefer lounging around to questing.
Or how about a stern, by-the-book high elf guard named Sir Rules-A-Lot? Just picturing them trying to maintain a straight face while reciting their own name during roll call.
It's gold. And it doesn't have to stop with individual characters. The article suggests using this technique for groups, too. Remember we were talking about that cursed noble family?
Oh, right, where the curses, they're saddled with these ridiculous names.
Exactly. It's not just a one-off gag, it becomes a running joke, a source of recurring humor throughout your campaign. Maybe your players keep encountering different members of this family, each with a name more outlandish than the last.
I love it. And you could even build a whole quest line around it. Maybe the players need to help lift the curse. Or perhaps they have to team up with this hilariously named family to save the kingdom.
You could have players going on quests FOR these NPCs too. Imagine eating something from Lord Sparklebottom.
Yeah,
Suddenly, the stakes of the quest feel very different, right?
totally. And speaking of stakes, I have to know, did the article have any advice on using these names for more serious aspects of a campaign, like, say, a powerful magic item?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, the article argues that the contrast there is even more potent. Imagine discovering a legendary sword forged in the fires of Mount Doom, destined to vanquish evil, and it's inscribed with Fluffy McStabberson.
I think I just died laughing. The sheer absurdity of it is genius.
It's about finding those unexpected moments of levity, those little winks to the audience that say, hey, we're all here to have fun. And sometimes the funniest thing you can do is take something incredibly serious and give it a completely ridiculous name.
Which brings us back to this idea of subverting expectations. The more seriously something is presented, the funnier it becomes when you juxtapose it with something completely silly. But how do we make sure we're not going overboard?
That's where knowing your audience, your players, is crucial. The article emphasizes that humor is subjective. What sends one player into hysterics might fall flat with another.
So it's really about finding that sweet spot where the humor enhances the game without completely derailing it.
Exactly. Think of it like seasoning. A sprinkle of humor can make a campaign more flavorful, but too much can overpower everything else.
That's a great analogy. So for dungeon masters out there who might be a little hesitant to introduce this kind of humor, what advice would you give them?
I'd say start small. Maybe introduce an NPC with a funny name, or give a magical item a humorous inscription. See how your players respond.
It's almost like testing the waters to see what kind of humor lands best with your group.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to get your players in on the joke. Maybe they'd enjoy coming up with ridiculous backstories for their characters based on their names.
That could be a blast. Imagine the campaign stories that could spin out of a character named Sparkle McSparkleface or Lord Featherbottom.
You're getting it. It's about embracing the unexpected, finding the humor in the juxtaposition of the epic and the absurd.
And ultimately, isn't that what makes D&D so much fun? It's this collaborative storytelling experience where anything can happen.
Precisely. And a well-placed, funny name, whether it's for a character, a place, or even a magic item, can be the spark that ignites those truly unforgettable moments.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the art of crafting hilarious high elf names, what's the key takeaway for our listeners?
Remember that a name is more than just a label. It's a story waiting to be told, an opportunity to inject personality, humor, and a touch of the unexpected into your game.
It's about embracing the absurdity, subverting those classic fantasy tropes, and having a good laugh along the way. So the next time you're tempted to go with another generic elven name, take a chance.
Embrace the ridiculous.
Unleash your inner comedian.
And see where your imagination takes you.
Because you never know. Your next D&D campaign might just be legendary thanks to a name like Majestic Bedhead or Sparkle McSparkleface. Because ultimately, whether a name,
makes you laugh out loud or just raises an eyebrow.
It's about adding that special something to your game.
That spark of the unexpected.
Yeah.
So the next time you create a character,
don't be afraid to embrace the power of a good pun.
A clever contrast.
Or even a gloriously silly name.
You might just surprise yourself with what you come up with.